This podcast is entitled The Ministry of Presence. Presence is the business of showing up, the business of simply being there. Presence means loving a person by giving him or her yourself, the gift of your presence. Presence is such an amazing thing because when you give somebody the ministry of your presence, you recognize that it isn't necessary to have any answers. It isn't necessary to be able to say the right thing. It isn't necessary to say anything at all. All that is necessary is to just be there. Your presence is a ministry. It's a gift that you give of yourself to another person. Job's a great example of someone who desperately needed somebody to minister to him. He lost everything. He lost his children. He lost his wealth. He lost his health. Finally, he's reduced to sitting on an ash heap scraping his sores with a broken piece of pottery. His wife says to him, "Why don't you just curse God and die?" Job says, "Woman, you don't know what you're talking about. Shall a man receive good from the hand of the Lord and then object when he receives evil?" Job really needed somebody to minister to him, and sooner or later his friends showed up. First of all, they were so overwhelmed that they just sat down with him and they said nothing at all. They just sat there for several days, experiencing his misery, being with him. And they were doing really good care at that point. And then they blew it. They opened their mouths. They tried to explain what had happened to Job. They tried to explain why God had allowed these things to happen to him. And eventually God himself had to come down and rebuke them and ask Job to pray for them. Told them they didn't know what they were talking about. I had an experience something like that when I had the viral brainstem encephalitis. I was really sick. Didn't fully know what was going on, but knew that my neurosurgeons suspected that there was a very fast-growing midbrain tumor, and they were determined to find it and get it out of there. And I looked awful, and I felt awful. One eye went one direction, another eye went the other direction, and I looked really sick. People were frightened by what had happened to me. When they came to see me, they got sick and ran out of the room. People didn't know what to say, so most of them stayed away. The most helpful people, though, were the ones who came and just sat. They just sat by my bed. They just sat. Maybe they held my hand. Or they just sat and they kept my wife company while she sat there next to my bedside. That was something that I remembered even through the fog of my mental confusion and my illness. And it meant so much to me. It was healing to simply have people be present and give me the gift of their own presence at that time. Never, ever underestimate the ministry of presence. You may not know what to say. You may have run through your bag of medical tricks and be fresh out of things that you can do for a patient. You may not have any good explanations or good reasons of why this thing could have happened to them or what the future is going to hold for them. But you choose to just give yourself to them, and so you come and you are present with them. You show up. Never, ever underestimate just how powerful that is.